Guest. And so today our guest is Sertalp, who is an optimization specialist, FPL manager, who co-hosts his own podcast and website called FPL Optimize. Sertalp, good morning. Welcome to Bendito Fantasy. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And yeah, good morning again, Leo and Elmire. So yeah, I'm doing well. Excited for the FPL already.
I see you're wearing a Liverpool shirt, so we can
Yes.
start there. Are
Okay.
you excited for the game today?
Yeah, I'm very excited. Well, it can go either way. Like I think Club was saying that like if you lose the game, it's not important, but if you win it, then it's an important important cup game. Yeah.
So I assume then you are a Liverpool fan, or you just support Liverpool today?
Yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan. Actually, back in 2005, when Liverpool had their Champions League final against AC Milan, I was in high school at that time, and it was kind of my first time watching them. And you might remember, but the first half finished 3-0 for the AC Milan, and then Liverpool won that game. So yeah, that was the game I actually started following Liverpool, and I was just following on and off like over the years, but I wasn't really watching games live. I was just tracking how they were doing in recent years. But yeah, it has changed after I started playing FPL.
How can I forget the Miracle of Istanbul?
Yeah.
That historic match. Everybody knows about that match.
That's true.
Yeah, well, if you were alive, maybe. I don't know. Some guys are too young for those type of matches.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, true.
So okay, Sertalp, what can you tell us about yourself? What do you do? How did you get into FPL?
Sure. So I got all of my education in industrial engineering, which is mainly interested in using limited resources to like optimize processes, like making like providing more profits for businesses, for example, or delivering like logistics items in a shorter amount of time, like these kind of problems. Always you are trying to optimize something. And that's what I do for a living too. So we provide optimization consulting or modeling for businesses for their processes. So there are a variety of optimization problems. As you can imagine, there is something to be optimized in every sector, in every business. And so we work on a variety of problems. And so one of my colleague at work said, okay, there's this fantasy game that I have been playing for years. Would you like to have a look at it? Maybe you can, again, use optimization to play it. And I wasn't really interested at the beginning. I just checked it quickly just to see how it looks like. And then, so you know that there are fantasy games where you make a decision every week, but it is separate. Like from week to week, there is nothing in between. So you can choose an entirely different squad, which doesn't seem like an interesting problem to me. But then I learned FPL is different, where you have a squad and then you keep it, or you get penalized if you want to transfer more players. I found that aspect pretty interesting because there is an actually optimization problem very similar to this nature. And I said, yeah, why don't I just give it a try and using, analytics? And that's how I started playing, actually.
Yeah, that's great.
awesome.
How long was that? How long ago?
I finished my second season, so this will be my third season.
Oh
Okay.
wow! So you basically started a couple of years ago with this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty new.
So how was the first season versus the second season?
Oh, there's a big difference. So in my first season, first of all, at the beginning of the season, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to use numbers, but I wasn't really familiar with what kind of data people were following. So I remember checking, this might be a little bit funny, but FIFA ratings, like from the game FIFA,
Oh.
there are players' numbers. So I was trying to see if I can fetch those numbers from the internet, because there's a website called sofifa.com where they list all the stats for every player, like defense, offense, I don't know, speed. So I was like, can I optimize a team and then have a FPL team composed of it? But as you know, like how good a player is sometimes irrelevant for FPL purposes, which I didn't know at that time. So then I learned there are people who are building prediction models. So they are kind of already giving an average points to you. So I said, okay, this is what I need. So I can actually optimize over this. And then it was a challenge because there are also chips, and also there are some interesting rules. Like, for example, you lose your extra free transfer after wildcard, which I learned painfully. So all of those small things, I think, contributed a little bit. I finished my first season in 300,000-ish, 304,000.
Yeah.
And
that is very good for a newbie.
Yeah, but my second season went much better. I finished, I think, 3,800 or something.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do you
100 times
think
improved.
obviously the knowledge of the game and its nuances, all these details of like you lose a transfer when the wild card kicks in, etc. That obviously has an impact, but not 290
True.
places in impact. So do you think this aspect of analyzing the data, is the thing that really made you jump now that you understand the game and you understand the parameters that the game has, and that you can use them to put into the models?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in my first season, I was also a little bit lucky with some of the 50-50 decisions. Like when everyone was buying Gündoğan, I bought Foden, and then there was a huge difference between how many points they have collected over those weeks. And so yeah, in my first season, I think I was a little bit unlucky. But in my second season, I changed how I play a little bit, because in my first season I was just running my optimization model, getting the result, and doing whatever it says. Like no questions asked. No, I wasn't even spending any time on it. I was just applying whatever the model gives to me. But so one thing that I think mattered much was chip timing, because like in an optimization model, chip timing is very tricky because, well, we usually keep our wildcard or maybe like bench boost, free hit, whatever, for double or blank game weeks, which, well, model doesn't have an idea because it only looks as limited horizon, like maybe 8 game weeks. And then it says, yeah, let's use wildcard. But that's, well, even though it sounds optimal, it's not. Well, I know now. So I think chip timing affected a lot, because in my second season, I tried to follow what other people are doing. I met with also other people. I asked their opinion about, what's an ideal time to use wildcard. And so I made my model in a way that I control some of the parameters now. Like in past, I was doing whatever model was giving to me, but now I have some kind of control over how I optimize it. I think which made a big difference.
Okay. You're talking about very interesting topics because
Mhm.
every time we have a data model and you start using that data to feed all the information back to us, there's a classic computer science saying, right? That is, if you input trash, you will get trash,
Yeah,
right?
true.
So the more you learn about it, it's gonna be easier and better for the predictions and the things that it gives you. And now this season we are gonna have a new problem, let's say, that
Mhm.
is we have the wild card, but we have the wild card that is only for a few game weeks,
Mm.
and then we have another thing that we don't call
Free
it a
trust.
wild card, but it's also a wild card.
Yeah, it's about
So
Canada.
so it's gonna change a little bit of that thinking, and basically you have to readjust what the model is doing or thinking.
Yeah, true. Even like last season when they gave us the second free hit,
Right.
it just yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't really ready for it, and my model wasn't ready for it. Like I never thought we will get a second free hit at any
Right.
point, and I had to rewrite some parts of it. It's because I always assumed like there will be only one free hit anyway. So, but again, this year when we have more, well, we have some kind of an extra wildcard for game week 17, which yeah makes it a little bit different because well, if ideal wildcard time is around game week 8, 9, let's say, then
Mhm.
you will have like 4 sprints of 8 game weeks if you also use your wildcard, let's say, to split the remaining time horizon into 2 roughly equal parts. So instead of having the first wildcard relatively closer to the beginning of the season, and then having your second wildcard in late season, now like you have 4 very small chunks of decision making. I don't know if it will be better for people who are using models or not, but I feel like there will be less of an edge for everyone, like even if you are spending time to get the best players. So since you will have a wild card anyway, or you will have a chance to replace your entire squad anyway,
Mhm.
so yeah, we will see how it goes. But I feel like most people, well, I feel like template will be very strong because it will be almost as if we will wildcard at the same time, everyone together, just like in game week 1. So it will be
Yeah,
different.
yeah. I think I've been thinking the same
Mhm.
in terms of wildcarding at the same time, because everybody's saying like the first international break this year is gonna be around week 8 or 9. I think
9,
it's
yeah.
eight, 9. So
Between,
so
yeah.
everybody's thinking we can use it in 8 or maybe 9, but I'm pretty sure the spike is gonna be 8.
Yeah.
So we have also some fixture swings in those days, and it's just gonna move very uniformly, and then we come back from the World Cup. If the World Cup has I don't know, injuries or something, that's also
Yeah.
gonna determine the template. So finding that. So here's a question: when you are working with a optimized version, are you looking for differentials, or are you looking for just maximization of points? How does
Mhm.
that work?
So that's a good question. Actually, so when I am optimizing, I'm trying to optimize the average case. So I'm just optimizing or maximizing points, not taking ownership into account.
Hmm.
But well, so there are similar games to FPL in terms of like if you are chasing in a mini league that there's one guy with 15 specific players. If you are trying to catch up, then you need to take more risks. So even if you are thinking in a mini league level, or I mean, it's true for your like overall rank too. If you are trailing behind, and then if there's a significant gap to the first person or OR1, then you need to take some risks. I mean, that's also like very intuitive to us, but that's also true mathematically. But since we don't know what will happen closer to the end of season, it is usually, well, at least in my opinion, it is usually better to start the season trying to maximize your points, not
Okay.
taking ownership into consideration. And because, I mean,
Haha.
for highly owned players, if they blank, you will be in a good position anyway. So you don't need to follow what everyone is doing. And as you get closer to the end of the season, maybe second half of the season, let's say, if you're already far from where you want to be, then I think that's a better time to take some risk. But yeah. Not sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right, and I'll let Mireille talk because I've been asking all the questions. But I'm thinking, for example, Mo Salah last year he dropped in form, and some people, I mean, he's the classic template man, and but some people decided we are just gonna move away from him, and that's a risk. But if you moved in the right moment out of those players to a better player in those moments, like for example, it was Son. It really pays off, and we can talk about that in a second. But Mireille, do you have any question to follow up?
Yeah, now that we're talking about how you the things that you consider in your wildcard. So let's say, for example, this year that you mentioned that a possible good scenario will be to wildcarding around game week 8 or game week 9. So how would do you input in your model, for example, like you plan at the long run and then you fix down the road and see how it goes, or do you optimize as much as possible from the very beginning to try to save transfers? Like, let's say, for example, it's always good to have 2 transfers, like don't make a transfer 1 week and then save in case you need to make a major modification down the road. How do you input that in your model, or do you even consider that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because in my first season, I forgot, but one of the things that I was doing differently was I was optimizing my entire plan, including transfers. So who I will transfer this game week, how about next game week, and then the week after, which turned out to be some kind of a bad idea, because you never do those transfers because it like predictions change. Well, first of all, predictions change, and then people get injured. Then you suddenly have a player, and sometimes fixtures also change. Well, especially with the COVID last seasons. So I found myself in very tight spots with like maybe 7 playing players. So I have to transfer players and take a hit, which I didn't enjoy much. So then, last season I tried to make it so that I plan using as fewer transfers as possible. So for example, if I'm optimizing for 8 game weeks, I was limiting my scheduled transfers to 2 or 3 at most, just to see that if switching a premium maybe will worth the hassle. I mean, an optimization model is a little bit tricky because sometimes it goes and transfers a goalkeeper, like it plans to switch the goalkeeper, which is usually a bad idea, because I mean even though goalkeepers get their clean sheet, I mean their points are roughly consistent. So maybe switching a premium was the play around those times. So when I'm optimizing for a wild card, I'm trying to optimize for a long time period. I try to pick players that will hurt me the least if they have to stay in my squad. So and if I have a chance to replace them, then that's great.
Yeah.
Right. And for example, I don't know if you consider this in your model, but for example, in at least myself, I have this rule that if I have to make at least 6, in between 6 and 8 transfers, that is triggering my wildcard, for example, independently of whether it is a good time or a bad time. Let's say for whatever reason I had 3 or 4 players that are injured, so I need to make changes, of course. So you can rely on your bench. So do you consider those things as well? Like, for example, you plan ahead to make your wildcard in whatever game week, and then suddenly life happens, because we have to remember that this game is based on something that is going on in real life. So do you consider those things as well?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I kept my options open like all the time. Like luckily I didn't have any cases where I lost so many players at the same game week, so that I had to use my wildcard. But one thing I remember from last season is, so they announced the fixture changes on game week 26, very close to the deadline. So we knew about, which game weeks will have a double. And at that time, I actually ran my optimization model and see that it was actually optimal to use wildcard, like second wildcard on game week 26.
Okay.
But I wasn't really ready for it because there wasn't too much time left until the deadline. I wasn't mentally prepared, I guess. I said, I will save it for later because I can't spend time now to make a wildcard squad that will make me happy. But I keep my options open. So suddenly, like even if I am planning for wildcarding on game week 8, let's say, if suddenly if I get like 4 injured players on game week, I don't know, 3, 4, or maybe rotated players, who are getting benched week after, happens too. So I can't use my wildcard. Like I don't generate a plan and then stick it until the end. I constantly update my plans.
Okay, that's awesome. And maybe with that we mentioned that at the starting the season, probably we can follow up with another topic, which is for game week one. Game week one is always tricky because you have all this new amount of players, and then you have all these new new transfers that came to the game, to every single team. Does data works for game week one, or is just luck?
So well, for prediction models, game week 1 is actually very tricky. Like beginning of the season is probably the worst time because you really don't know how the underlyings will change, especially for players who change their teams. I mean, like Jesus on Arsenal now, like keeps scoring goals in friendlies. So I mean, obviously, he's a good player and he has underlyings from last season. But at the beginning of this season, well, we really don't know. Like, you can use data and try to predict his base stats, and then using his position now, you can come up with a prediction. But how reliable that prediction will be, well, I don't know. I mean, we know that it is less reliable. But when I was talking with the prediction modelers on this, I was talking with FPL Review, and his thinking is model is good enough to identify like average stats for a player, and then where the player is playing now, like which kind of team. So he's kind of taking other players into account when he's calculating the predicted points for a player, which I find very interesting. I mean, obviously reliability will be an issue either way because you don't know. But so game week 1 is
so you mentioned Jesus, so let's talk about him. Right now, you've run some simulation, some optimization data, I'm pretty sure, and you've talked to people. What is the general feeling you get around him? We know his data from previous season will not help because it's different team, it's a different position probably, and now he just keeps scoring goals. I mean, he just scored 3 goals. So this week in our podcast, we were discussing, and I was giving the argument that maybe Saka is a safer choice, and maybe the model is showing you that in optimization, it's probably safer to go to Saka, same price, but more constant, and you actually know what you're getting into. But Jesus is just breaking it because it keeps scoring and it makes you doubt. So what is the feeling? What do you think and what do you know about this?
So I mean, even when he was priced at 8 million, we were a little bit surprised because I mean it's really cheap for a player of his caliber, right? So, and when we were running with the early numbers, like early predictions that FPL Review gave us, or even also using with the FPL Kiwi's predictions, I see his name appearing in optimal squads in most of the time.
Okay.
And well, obviously friendly games also helped us to reinforce that thinking. So I was thinking, even if model doesn't suggest me to get him, would I get him in my squad anyway? Because I mean, his underlyings are good and his friendly game performance is good too. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about, Saka versus Jesus, but well, seems like yeah, he will be a good pick either way.
Good. You're in the camp of the majority. I think he's right now even more selected than Salah. So that
He
has to
is,
mean
yeah.
something.
So just to conclude, probably the first week stuff. So
Mhm.
do you build your team manually for game week 1, or do you let the algorithm suggest you, hey, pick this player because for whatever reason the algorithm is throwing back to you? Or do you say, okay, I'm just gonna give it a try with what I'm thinking is a better solution, because probably the algorithm doesn't have this bigger picture of new teams, new transfer, new players, new environments, whatever. That's the reason.
So it is actually a combination of both. First of all, I start with using the algorithm. I just run the algorithm and get like 15 players. That's how I start my planning. And the first thing I do is getting opinions of others in my friend group. So asking them what they think about the team. And so especially last season, I was getting feedback like, oh, why are you getting this player? You will block your, like, let's say third Liverpool spot, for example. Which then I go into kind of a like semi manual planning mode where I ban that player from the algorithm and I run it again, and then it gives you a different squad this time. And then I iterate a little bit. So over the last season, I kept adding new and new features. Like, for example, Solver rarely wants to have a 4 million bench goalkeeper. It likes having like 4.5 million goalkeepers and then, switching them over a region, which is usually, I don't know, like not a good idea, I guess. I mean, in terms of fixtures, yes, but not sure if I have the bandwidth to, change my goalkeeper every game week.
Right.
So then, yeah, for example, that was a feedback I got, and I added a new constraint to my model saying that, okay, for my bench goalkeeper, I want a 4 million goalkeeper and then optimize it over that. So obviously that X00.5, you use it for somewhere else, and then it gives you a different squad. So I usually iterate a little bit, and at the end of those iterations, I also use something we call sensitivity analysis, because so when prediction models give you predictions, you might have noticed that sometimes a player is projected to get 6.1 and another one is supposed to get 6.0, and you're thinking, is 0.1 that important between these two players? Let's say between Jesus and Saka. If the difference is that low, like, isn't it better to go with the highly owned player, because that kind of represents what majority of the people are thinking? So what I do is I perturb those numbers. I don't keep it as is, but I change them in a region so that instead of 6.1, it becomes 6.3. In some of the replication, it becomes 5.9, for example. And I solve the problem repeatedly and then summarize in how many, like, what's the percentage of this player appearing in the optimal squad. That helps me to see what are the options if I don't trust numbers that much. And usually among those players, I'm able to choose 15 players out of it. But yeah, there are times that I use I don't know how to call it, but how I feel
Your
about a
intuition.
certain player. Yeah, my intuition. Yeah, about a player. And yeah, but I mean, even if I come up with a team that way, it's usually a highly scored team in terms of how algorithm reads it.
So when you talk about your model and what you do, you have a web page that is called
Yes.
fploptimize.com. Is that available to everyone? Is that model that you're talking about? Is that something that I go there and I can play with my own team to optimize myself?
So okay, so yeah, this question is a little bit different because so optimization, well, by itself is a very computationally expensive process. I know that there are websites which helps you to which suggest you a player, like you go there and then they suggest you transfers. But those planners are usually, or those optimizers are usually not. Well, this will be a little bit technical, but they're not actually optimizing it to the true optimal, but they are just iterating over possible alternatives and think that, oh, okay, this player has more expected points. Why don't you buy him? But the optimization I do is where you need to have a machine in front of you to run those algorithms. A web page cannot really run those because it usually takes a few minutes to run those algorithms. And so on FPL Optimize, most of the tools are available. Yeah, it's freely available, but optimization is actually not a part of it. There is a link to optimal squads where I pre-optimized teams and then I share different optimal squads, like pre-optimized in a way. But yeah, so on top of that, I also have a GitHub repository for people who are a little bit familiar with Python, which they can download my optimization model, and if they want, they can run it on their own machine. Yeah, that's what I provide. But yeah, tools on FPL Optimize, they are usually about either pre-optimized teams, or some tools are for tracking how your game week is going in terms of how many points you were expected to score and how many points you got in reality, for example.
That sounds great. And now that you mentioned, for example, that you have your GitHub repository and everything, so those one requires a certain level of Python programming language, or I don't know if you use also C++ or any other programming language. Do someone who wants to go to your GitHub repository, clone it, and start playing with it, do they require a certain level of programming language knowledge or something?
So I try to make it as beginner friendly as possible. So if they go to the GitHub repository, they will see that there are instructions about how to download it, how to install the optimization solver, and how to run it. So they actually don't need to know Python. So they can actually download it and try to use it. And I usually tell people that if you have any questions, if you get stuck, you can ask me questions about how to do it, because there are some of the problems are common in terms of the setup, but I try to make it as easy as possible. Python knowledge is only important if you want to add your own kind of custom constraints. For example, I don't know, like I don't want any Everton players, so I don't have that constraint.
Nobody trusts Everton.
So if you want to customize the model in a specific way, you need to know Python. But no, for the optimization model, if you just want to download it and then use the prediction data on it, you don't need to. Well, you need to know how to use command prompt or terminal, like in your operating system. But that's not that difficult to figure out, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. So yeah, this is great. I've been using the web page for a while. I really like what you did for the highlights of the season, because it really lets you analyze what you did, how you did it. Sometimes it was actually a lot of information. I was like, I don't even know what to make of all of this. But some of these things like really make you look at it. And for example, I remember one graph that was beautiful that tells you more about how much in the template you are and how much is that helping you rank. So those kind of things for us, we in our podcast discuss a lot of data. but we don't go into this type of data detail. We go into more of the goals, the score, or even the XG, XA. Do you ever think of data in those terms, or more in the like raw data of everything that is generated and just into the system?
So yeah, I do actually. I like, even when I'm deciding on players or maybe transfers, I like to go to fbref.com and checking the expected goal and expected assist of the players I'm getting, because prediction models, they give you a number, but that number might mean anything. Is it coming from like goal predictions or maybe assist predictions? So one thing I know for sure is goal predictions are more accurate than assist. Well, FPL assists are also different, but also, yeah, assist numbers are not sometimes translated into actual numbers, or I should say it is less reliable. So like if there are two players around the same prediction point, I sometimes go and check like if their expected, like which one has a higher expected goal, because I know that the other one should be getting some part of his expected points from, well, projected points from the expected assist ratings, which is less reliable usually.
I see. So you have XA, XG, and there are so many other X's, XGI, etc. Do you think XG is the best way to kind of like dip your toes into this, or XGI might be more reliable? There's people that even divide it by 90 minutes. What would be your advice to look at this kind of data and be like, okay, this is a good prediction or a good way to sense the field?
I think the most accepted one is non-penalty. So it is NPXG, non-penalty expected goals per 90 minutes. So as you say, you divide it by the minutes they play times 90. So that is a really good estimation for most players if they have enough play time. Because, I mean, obviously there are some outliers who played only for 10 minutes and took a really good shot, and then suddenly their NPXG per 90 is over the charts. But so if you just discard some of the players who are not playing regularly for the remaining players, that gives a good idea, at least for offense players. Yeah, so I usually go from projected points, like see which players are like ranked highly in terms of prediction models, and then I make my way to the like NPXG, and then I check raw stats a little bit more.
Right.
Okay. So how many? Okay, I probably will start with another question. So, yeah, because this is like a storytelling, basically. So there have, for example, I started to play because of the same reason that you started to play, because I like statistics and I like to play with data, and to be honest, at the beginning I was not watching much the games. So probably I don't know. Do you follow the actual games, and you do the so-called eye test of the players when you pick your team?
So yeah, I think it's a controversial issue, right? So there are some analytics people in the community, you might probably have seen it, but they really don't like mentioning eye test. Like if you say eye test, I use eye test, they just get triggered, right? So
Right.
okay,
You
so
monster.
so in my first season, I didn't watch any games at all. Well, maybe one or two. Like I tried to watch games, but I get bored because I was trying to watch like Mitrovic's games. I had Mitrovic at the beginning of the season,
Oh no, bad
and
idea.
well, yeah, it was a bad idea. So I don't know. So in my second season, I watched more games. Like I tried to watch a game, like at least a game every week. So I don't use eye test in a way that, like, if I don't watch a game and then say that, okay, this player seemed like a good player, I should buy him, or maybe he didn't play where I should sell him. I don't do that. I just watch it to see, how the players I have selected are performing, like if they are getting goals, I mean, just for the excitement and fun. But here is the thing. So I think watching games has incredible value in terms of understanding the formations and also rotations, like which player came at which minute to replace which player. Was it an injury? Was it tactical? Like were they, I don't know, leading the game so that they changed attacker for a defender? I don't know. Like these kind of stuff gives you some context to understand like expected minutes going forward. Like if, let's say, Liverpool is leading the game with 2 goals, maybe they are getting, I don't know, a more defensive player in a substitution. So that kind of stuff might help you to understand, which players will have better minutes going forward. So, well, so I trust like stats more when it comes to picking players, but I feel like watching games has some value to understand these kind of contexts, or maybe even for the stats actually sometimes, because a player gets in a very lucky position, like they find ball in front of themselves with an open goal and then they take a shot. So that XG is some kind of little bit lucky in my opinion, because you weren't supposed to be there, you're a defender, but suddenly you find the ball, you take a shot. So I watch games, I try to understand context a little bit, but I can't really say that I'm an expert on that. So I usually ask other people what they are thinking.
Right, right, and I think what you mentioned is really important. But and I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think that actually might apply when you have all these convolution of game weeks that are super tight. Like you have one game week on the weekend, and then on the mid week you have another one, and then you have the next weekend, and then Champions League or Carabao Cup or whatever other tournament that the teams are playing, right? Because you need to know, okay, why did they switch this player? Who was the substitution? Where are they moving the player to play after the minute 60 or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. So especially for Liverpool last season, when they had lots of games, so they actually rotated Robertson with Tsimikas, because I mean Tsimikas was playing well too, like generating expected assists, in lots of expected assists too. So whenever I found myself in a position to choose like which Liverpool defender I should get, I tend to stay away from like Robertson in favor of, like, let's say Alexander Arnold or Van Dijk, because I felt like Robertson is more of a rotation risk at that point. Well, so knowing that he's getting substituted in the games regularly, and knowing that their busy period is coming up helps a little bit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, Mireille, you was just saying about the discussion about grass versus data. And this is exactly what your podcast is about. It's relatively new. It has 11 episodes, I think is the last one,
That's
if I'm
true. Yes,
correct.
11.
So you want to talk a little bit about the podcast? What was the idea behind it? I mean, we have 100 podcasts, and there is another one, and suddenly, even with all those hundreds, I think you are already in like at the top 10 in the UK. So it's getting acceptance. You would feel like a lot of people would be in the grass side, but we are in the data side, and we like it a lot. So it's gaining a lot of momentum.
True. So I mean, yeah, you're right. There are like hundreds of FPL podcasts, and so in our opinion, so we were really enjoying the podcast called Corridor of Uncertainty, an analytics, FPL analytics podcast. And we noticed that there are not too many people talking about, projected points or like optimization, analytics in general. So, and we started this podcast with my colleague Baz, who invited me to play FPL in the first place. So he thought like I could use numbers, he could use his eye test, and he could beat me. Even in my first season, despite my like 300,000 finish, I managed to beat him in both seasons. So
Oh,
he wanted to learn too, because he was surprised by what I am using, how I am using, because like getting in a 3,000 finish in my second season, it surprised him a lot because he was playing for many years. So he
right.
was asking me questions, and he said maybe we should record ourselves, because I'm already asking you questions, I'm trying to learn, so why don't we make this a podcast, maybe people will be interested. So yeah, at the time I was not really, I don't know, I didn't feel like having a podcast, because like it takes time, as you guys
It's
probably
a
know.
constant commitment.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
constant commitment. You need to find topics, and you need to get prepared. Sometimes you need to find guests and talk with them, and then sometimes their plans change. It
Yeah.
felt like a huge commitment. So I said, but he was so excited. So I said, okay, let's record a few episodes and see how it goes. If there's not enough interest, and if we don't maybe enjoy it as much, maybe we can stop. But if people enjoy it and we feel like having fun when we are doing it, maybe we can keep going. So, and my one of my biggest worries that in the debate where in the debate of grass versus analytics, or grass versus data, the part that makes data a little bit unappealing to people is that when you're using data, there could be only one answer. Well, if you're just watching games, you can have different ideas about, because like I have friends like watching the same game and coming
Mhm.
up with two different opinions on a player. One of them
Yeah.
says, well, Saka played incredible, I will get him. And the other one says, oh, he missed so many shots, like I'm definitely not getting him. But when you're using data, you usually have one answer that everyone has. But so what we are trying to do in this podcast, especially to bring that extra context, or maybe you can say it like eye test on top of analytics, to see what how we can use it, or what are the problems with using data, what are the potential problems with it, or where it can help you more than, I don't know, eye test, or maybe checking only raw statistics. For example, I don't know, shots on target, I mean, it's a good stat, but it's usually misleading if you are not using it in the correct way. So there are lots of topics that came up during our discussion. So we felt, yeah, why don't we have a podcast? But I don't know. It's a huge commitment. You're right.
No, I mean, I've listened, I think almost all of them. So the problem I have with that podcast is that it's so rich in good information that sometimes I just wanna. I'm driving and I'm like, I almost wanna write this down. And so I kind of like stop it until I get home, and so sometimes
Uh,
that delays me. But no, I seriously recommend it for everyone that enjoys that, because there is that context, right? The two sides of the story, you try to balance it a little bit so that
yeah,
it's not only about the data.
yeah.
Um, so that's why I like it so much, and I understand why it's gaining such popularity. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, and
Hmm.
I'm hoping that you keep it, that you find the time, and that you can continue,
Hmm.
because you started really late last season,
Hmm.
so really we didn't have the chance to see what that discussion and that type of analysis brings you during a season,
Yeah.
and how it affects decision making in general.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one thing that we didn't, I think, plan good, because like we started at the end of the season, which is usually not a good idea, because well, the FPL popularity falls down significantly towards the end of season. People stop playing. They forget playing. But there's usually a bigger hype at the beginning of the season, and we
Hmm.
can see even in our like episode downloads now. So it suddenly
Oh,
jumped towards in these months like July, and So I was thinking maybe we chose a bad time to start the podcast, but at least we were able to talk about all the fundamentals we wanted to talk
Right.
about. So we are in a good position to start the season and talk about weekly discussions about which players and why, instead of trying to lay the foundation.
Exactly. No, I see it as like your preseason. Right now, you're
Yeah.
fully trained. You are not camera shy or microphone shy or whatever.
True. That's true.
And now
That's true.
you can just go for it and start going. So one thing that I've been thinking about, and maybe at some point you can discuss it in the podcast, is I mentioned Hyunmin Son just earlier in the episode and how he rocketed when Salah was dropping. And
Yeah.
one thing that I immediately thought is, if you go to your data and if you run the simulation or your analysis, but backwards with what already happened, can you find something that was pointing or leading to the decision of like Son is about to explode?
Yeah. So, well, I ask myself the same question because around like 10, I don't exactly remember the weeks, but I think around 10 weeks before the season has finished, I was around the same rank and I was trying to push into top like 1000. And so one thing that could have helped me was, picking Son and then, selling Salah in the process. That could have probably taken me inside top 1K very easily. So, I mean, that's why I ask myself. I also asked other people who are using analytics and optimization to see, like, have we missed anything here? Like, have we made a mistake without even realizing? Like, were there a signal that we missed and that we maybe taken as a noise? But like even now, I'm thinking, I mean, Salah's underlyings are really good. So the fact that he didn't produce as many points as Son did during that time period is still, well, surprising to me. I mean, it happens. And the problem with football, we all say, is it's a low scoring game. Usually, you don't have, you know, players scoring multiple goals in a game. But when a player goes off, that's a rare occurrence in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have found any evidence that Son was about to go off in the data. It's maybe I am looking at wrong places. And because obviously we are trying to learn our lessons and then apply that knowledge in the next upcoming season, right? I'm still not sure if there could have been anything that probably gave me the signal I need to do that replacement or that transfer. I mean, I still regret my decision, but if I was in the same position with the same data I have, I could have probably done the same thing. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something I need to study a little bit deeper and dig deeper to understand.
Yeah. Okay, Mirai, last question.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned, for example, that you are co-hosting your podcast with someone who relies more in the eye test, and I'm pretty sure there is a lot of people who actually follow that method, that to watch the games, and they play more with feeling that with playing with the data. Of course, there are tons of people as well that do both, or only people like yourself that rely mainly on data. So
Yes.
for people who is playing in the feeling mode and watching the games and are starting to get into the interest of learning how to play with data as well, what would you recommend to someone who is starting to navigate those turbulent waters of the huge amount of data that you can find, not only in the API of Fantasy Premier League, but also in the broad world of internet? What would you recommend to someone?
So on this topic, I actually have a blog post that I share every now and then about how to start using analytics for FPL. But just to summarize it, so one thing that people can do is checking the prediction data. I mean, that's super easy. You just go to, well, FPL Review has it now. Other big websites like Fantasy Football Scout, Fantasy Football Hub. There are also free ones like the FPL Kiwi. Everyone is trying to generate these prediction data. I mean, at the very least, you should be able to just sort the values from higher to lower and see which players are projected to score more points. So I understand that people want to watch games and they want to pick the players that seems to be playing well to them. And the good thing is, if you are using optimization, you can actually lock or force in certain players, like whichever player you want. You might want to have this opinion say that I want to start season with Son and Kane, for example. You can actually have those two and then optimize the rest of it. But at the very least, you should be able to, check the projected points, because there will be lots of choices when it comes to like which, let's say, 8 million midfielder I should get. I mean, it is the easiest way is to just check the projected points and see if there's a meaningful difference. If they are, let's say, 0.5 point different from each other, I mean, in my opinion, that's significant. But if it is only 0.1, for example, then it's almost 50-50. It is up to you to choose whichever you want among those two. So I think that's the easiest way to start using analytics, because prediction models are the end product of all these data steps. Like, we are feeding input data these machine learning algorithms, and they try to evaluate the formation and then the context, and then at the end it's giving you a prediction, which we also usually compare against the betting probability or betting rates, because they also give you a probability of goal scoring, clean sheet. So these values are being tested, I hope. And so they are reliable to a degree. So if you're having a dilemma between player A and B, just go check the predicted points. That's, super easy in my opinion, and it's very valuable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll close with two questions. One is with dilemma A and B, and the last one is closer to the heart. So question one is really quick answers. Haaland or Kane for game week 1?
That's a very good question.
I think Haaland is in the starting lineup for today's game. So I think Haaland. If we know that he will start game week 1, I will go with Haaland. If there's any doubt about his minutes, I will go with Kane.
Great. And the last one is, do you think data will dominate FPL in the coming years?
I think so, because analytics players seem to getting higher and higher ranks every year, and prediction data is also getting better at predicting stuff. They are constantly being developed. It's an ongoing process. So I certainly do. I think in 5 years, or maybe even in 3 years, we will have an FPL winner who is mostly relying on data. That's my expectation.
Yep. I agree as well. And this is a topic that Mireille and we talk about all the time offline. And I'm happy to talk to other people that see this the same way. I know you also are in a Discord channel, and that is really active Discord channel. I just want to give a plug to that one. Is the FPL analytics community, and really active. A lot of people that is giving help and advice and just discussing this type of topics. Yes. So if you want to go there as well. And where can they follow you? In your Twitter is the best way to follow you around the internet? Webpage? Yes.
Yeah, my Twitter is probably the best. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you tell the community what is your Twitter?
Yeah, it is my first and middle name, Sertalp Bilal. It is Sertalp Bilal. It's a little bit long.
Yeah, I was just gonna link it because yeah, it's
Anyways,
it's a
we're
hard
gonna put it
name.
there in the description of this podcast.
Yeah.
So anyone who is listening can follow your work, amazing work actually. And well, thank you very much for taking the time for being with us, and we really appreciate all the insight and the knowledge that you are sharing with us. Leo, I don't know, do you want to?
Yeah, no, we'll keep talking during the season, and good luck with the podcast and with the season as well. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good luck to you too. And thank you for the invite, Leo and Mireille. It was a pleasure to be here.
It was a real pleasure to have you here.
See you later. We have one more week. We are going to have the Fan Fest. We're going to have captain choices that we didn't ask, Sertalp. Do you have a captain for game week 1 already in your head?
Salah, probably.
Right. That's probably the most...
the most data answer ever, I guess.
right. So there you go. We will discuss the other options at some point in the week, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.